Hi, it's Dave here at The Imperfect Individual, and I thought I'd do a little video around the local elections that happened last week. Some general comments on that, and it's not very topical because a bit of time's elapsed, but because of those censorious bastards at YouTube in Silicon Valley, I'm only able to upload the content now, so apologies for that it's not that topical. But I did want to say something. I don't comment so much on politics because I'm more interested in people and society, but I feel this was important, and let's see what I can ascertain about what the results say about society. So there we go. So before I start, I have created a Telegram channel. So if you click on the link below and just click join, you should be able to join there, and you'll be able to see the latest news. All my video uploads will go up on there. You'll be able to get involved in the conversation. And of course, with the ever-present threat of censorship, I have been censored twice already by YouTube. Then if this happens again and I do get censored and go off air, then we can still stay in touch. I've also done some playlists as well, about 15 separate categories, so have a look at them. So, local elections, politics. Well, who's really ever in charge? As many of us undergo a process, I think, of, it gets called waking up, doesn't it? At the awakening, the Great Awakening. It certainly made me think. I've always had suspicions that there may be men in dark suits, a shadow government, but I think it goes even deeper than that. So is democracy really just an illusion? We can't prove that, can we? But it's certainly a very, very interesting area to look at that. And it's something that I have looked at. Again, I have to be careful what I say, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm not here to talk about the Great Reset and United Nations and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all that kind of thing. Let's talk about politics in its traditional sense. So, and what the results were and what it says. So I'll talk about Labour, Conservatives and SNP. That's what I'm going to talk about. So start with Labour, right? So it says everything about Labour. That when fielding a candidate for a by-election in Hartlepool, which voted, I think, around about 70% to leave the European Union, that they fielded a candidate who voted Remain and who's very passionate about the Remain cause. That says everything to me. Are they stupid? Are they that stupid? Or are they that ideological? And I think the problem, or is it both, because the two often go hand in hand, but it says everything about Labour, that after all the criticism that they've had about not respecting the wishes of the electorate, about sticking two fingers up to their traditional voters who voted for Brexit, it says everything that in the face of all that, they'd still put up a candidate who voted for Remain. It blows my mind. Are our politicians really that stupid? Well, when it comes to intelligence, actually, I think this is a problem with the Labour Party. Keir Starmer, as much as I can't stand him, he's not stupid. He's a clever fella. You look at that Labour front bench and just think, wow, you put a bunch of monkeys on there, and they'd have more intelligence. I think a lack of intelligence amongst Labour is a massive, massive problem. I think they have a leader who is weak. To me, he's like Boris Johnson without the charisma. Doesn't particularly stand for anything. He'll blow whichever way the wind's blowing, but he doesn't have the charisma and the personality. As much as I don't like Boris Johnson, that's why a lot of people do vote for him, I think. As well as I don't think he has the innate understanding of his country as well. I think Boris Johnson's able to tap into that. So they haven't got the right type of leader. Above all, they're anti-democratic, aren't they? They proved that with Brexit, and they're still proving it now. There are still factions of the party obsessed with the UK's decision to leave the European Union. And the main reason, they're too ideological, and they have fully embraced the woke revolution. For woke, read communist. And I will do a separate video around wokeism, whatever you want to call it, what it is and what it represents and what it means and how dangerous it is. So woke. There ain't many people in Hartlepool who are woke. I don't know that many people who are woke. Most people aren't. Most sane people aren't. Most people who have some modicum of respect for freedom of speech aren't woke. And I think most Labour voters have become traditional Labour voters absolutely sick to death of the party that they voted for generations, talking down to them, telling them why they're sexist, telling them why they're misogynistic, telling them why they're xenophobic, telling them why they're racist, and telling them why they're thick. All the time. They never stop. Ever stop. I mean, I class Labour as, it's very obsessed with the youth. It's very obsessed with the London. It's very obsessed with niche issues. It's the same type of politics that is espoused by the BBC and the Guardian. And I think the majority of people look at that and are appalled by it. Absolutely appalled. And it's no surprise that Labour, they've not rid themselves of that far left woke communist element, even despite Jeremy Corbyn no longer being the leader. In fact, they're probably even worse now. And until they do, they're going to have a massive problem. I think Labour are dead. I think they're a joke. I think you can write them off forever. And I really mean that, forever. Conservatives, on the other hand, right, so let's go back to December 2019 when they won with a majority of 80. That election was won because of Brexit. The Tory party only care about themselves. They care about staying in power, and they're exceptionally good at it. And they always have been, which is why they've been the dominant political force in this country for the last century. They looked at the situation and decided that it was their only means of survival was to clearly back Brexit, elect a leader who was very vociferous about Brexit, Boris Johnson, even though, I think he only adopted that cause because he could see which way the wind was blowing and jumped on there. They had to do that, and then they had to pitch themselves in that election of get Brexit done. Absolutely 100% guarantee that it would be done, otherwise that would have been electoral oblivion for them. So they didn't care about Brexit, but they care about their own survival. People elected them, though, because they knew they would have to extricate the UK from the European Union, and they did. That was why I voted for the Conservatives. I knew that I was pretty confident they'd get a big majority, which would give them a very big, good leverage in the negotiations, and that they would have to get it done. Otherwise, like I say, they would have met their demise in the next election. So that's what's happened. So with what the difference between Conservatives and Labour is, Conservatives have always adapted and shaped their policy and what they bring to the table in accordance with what the electorate tells them. Labour, in all their arrogance, think they can do the opposite, think the electorate should adapt to what they're telling them, which is just ridiculous. So there's the difference. The Tories don't mind what they stand for as long as it gets them elected, which is handy because it does get them elected. So there we go. So why did they do well in this election? 3 things. A reward for Brexit, I would suggest. Number 1, Brexit is still forming part of the political debate, although not for much longer. It's going to fade away now. And the next election is going to be about the centrepiece. This focal point is going to be about something else. Come to that in a minute. So number 1, Brexit. Number 2, I think everybody knows what my thoughts are on the vaccine and the vaccine rollout. However, many people's perception of what's clearly been exceptionally efficient, hasn't it? And many people's perception, it's not my perception, many people's perception is that has been a huge success and that it paves the way to everything returning to normal. Highly naive, I think, as I've described and outlined and highlighted in numerous videos. However, I wasn't the one who voted for the Conservatives and I didn't vote for them. I spoiled my ballot, by the way, first time I've ever done it. But I think I understand why other people did vote for them. Brexit, the vaccine rollout. And the third thing is that, and this is the most interesting, is that the Conservative Party are socialist. There's nothing conservative about them. Nothing. Someone tell me something conservative about them, apart from all the corruption that's going on. Take that as read. Apart from all the corruption that's going on, what's conservative? I just see socialism on steroids. I see China-inspired, USSR-inspired socialism. It's that bad. And look what it's doing to society. But of course, with that comes mass state support. Sorry, he's still there. Just whack the table. Sorry about that. Hope you didn't get a fright. Mass state support and spending and welfare is that. Have the Conservative Party position themselves as the radical alternative to Labour? Well, probably, yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why it still gets called the working class. I don't think the working class exists anymore, but traditional ex-Labour voters voting for Conservative because they can see that they're offering what Labour once offered, but to an even greater extent. I think people in most places are seeing that. There are still little enclaves of fanatical Labour support, for example, in my home city of Liverpool. But generally speaking, I think that might be the third reason. Now, this is what really strikes fear into me. Two things. First of all, we don't have it. As far as I'm concerned, there is no right of centre viable option. Certainly not represented in Parliament. I've never felt more disconnected from politics. I can't stand them all, to be honest with you. But as someone who is traditionally, and I'm talking about traditional way of looking at politics, because I don't necessarily look at things this way anymore. I've always been a traditional right of centre, and I would usually vote for the Conservative Party, small state, I believe in all that, simply because it puts more emphasis on the individual and the individual taking responsibility, and that is what a society needs to a very large degree in order to be successful and altruistic and highly developed. As history proves to us what happened in various countries, in various eras. If you go down the route of socialism, you just end up with suffering. So I believe in that. So that may be the reason. Now, so there is no right of centre alternative. Now, does the left-right paradigm even exist anymore? Do people vote along those lines anymore? Probably not. I think people now are thinking about broader themes. Brexit dominated the UK political landscape for 5 years until now. It'll stop dominating it now. And the other thing is how people are viewing security versus freedom. More and more people are really starting to examine that. And I think by the time we come to the next election, if we ever get to have one, because if we look at the situation in another way, as I've outlined many times, we're going down a dangerous route which threatens democracy itself. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say, so lost my train of thought there. What was the other thing I was going to say was, oh yeah, right. So this is the high watermark for the Conservative Party. They're riding the back of a wave of optimism, I think, that may be sweeping the country as people think, oh, things are going back to normal. Now, I think it's all illusory. And I personally think that there's a lot of people still who haven't made the connection yet that their society has changed beyond recognition, that we've undergone a political revolution and an economic revolution, a media revolution, a social revolution, a health revolution, an AI revolution, but certainly a political and an economic revolution and a social revolution, and that life is not going to go back to what it was. And I think that when the penny drops with people, things from a political landscape will change massively. I may be wrong, and I'm always very reluctant to comment on how other people may be perceiving a situation, but this is how I perceive why so many people have voted for a Conservative Party that has imprisoned them, that has robbed them of their freedoms, that has economically destroyed many lives, taken away healthcare? Is there some bizarre kind of like Stockholm syndrome going on where the electorate's falling in love with the government that's their captor? I don't know. Or is it merely people are under this spell, under this illusion that in 1 month's time, everything's going to go back to the way it was? Because it's not. And any of us who've been paying attention know that. Unless we're wrong, of course. Scotland, let's talk about Scotland. SNP. I was in Edinburgh a couple of weekends ago. I think I did a couple of videos from there for you. And no, it doesn't really feel like a country that's on the brink of revolution to me. It's certainly a very divided country. But what country isn't divided these days in the West? Scotland's just another one of them. I'd say 50-50. Unionists against separatists, independents, voters. Yeah, so they did well in the election, but they were predicted to. The last independence referendum was in 2014, and we were told by the SNP a once in a generation election that'll settle it for a generation unless there's a fundamental change. And obviously they're arguing that Brexit was the fundamental change. Let them have their independence referendum is what I say. Not because I want Scotland to go, because I want them to stay, because I am a passionate unionist and I value Scotland in the union. But I am so convinced the Scots would vote to stay in the union, and that would finish the debate forever. Forever. It'd be the end of the SNP. We'd never have to see Nicola Sturgeon's ugly mug on our faces ever again. On our screens ever again. I mean, surely it'd be worth it for that. I think for Scotland to vote to leave the United Kingdom will be too much of an ask for too many voters to stomach. I think possibly if times were different, if we hadn't had the whole COVID thing, and if Scotland was still in the European Union, the case would be, if the UK was still in the European Union, the case would be easier made. But right now, I think you'd have voters that in other occasions, in other times, may consider voting for Scotland to extricate itself, just won't be prepared to. I am convinced that there would be a fairly healthy mandate for Scotland to stay in the United Kingdom. What is the case other than independence? I don't see how a logical, sensible case could be made like it was for Brexit. Even though you had all the crybabies who couldn't conceive of the notion that there could be an argument made to leave the European Union. Well, you know, we've been 6 months out of it now, and you know the world's not ended, has it? Now with Scotland, the economic case for leaving the United Kingdom, the UK is already in massive debt. Scotland would have to take on an even bigger share of the Westminster debt if it left. How would it be admitted to the European Union with that massive budget deficit? How long would it take to enter into the European Union? Why would they want to enter the European Union, which is a failing project anyway? What would their currency be? What would be the situation on the border? As far as I can see, these arguments weren't made out last time, and they're not being made out this time. It's too much of a risk. And I think as well, just the turmoil that everyone's been through in their lives. I think people are sick of elections, sick of voting. There was the whole Brexit thing that went on, and now COVID as well. Too much turbulence in people's lives. I think it's too much to stomach for people. I really do. So let them have the vote. They'll vote no, and then that'll put it to bed for 100 years, 200 years. And the union can be secured. That's what I say. Call their bluff, Boris Johnson. So there we go. There are my thoughts on the local elections and where we stand at the moment. That's looking through the prism of very traditional politics, looking through it in a very traditional way, which I don't necessarily do anymore. But there we go. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think? and what do you think is going to be the focal point for the next general election in 2 or 3 years. All right, I'll speak to you all soon. Bye bye.